The second designer that I want to introduce to you is a Spanish architect named Gaudi. It also starts with a story. In 2010, I went to visit the Shanghai World Expo. During the visit, I suddenly saw a sculpture in front of me, which also seemed very familiar to me. I said, "I've seen this sculpture somewhere before." Take a closer look. It is a lizard-shaped sculpture made of mosaics. I thought this style was created by the Spanish architect Gaudi because he is more accustomed to breaking up pieces of mosaics than inlaying them and finally processing them into such pieces of art. And he likes to use this lizard shape very much. Then I saw a sign next to it saying, "This is a gift from the city government of Barcelona to the Shanghai government to commemorate the friendship between these two cities." So I found that Gaudi's design gene can flash in many places. When I was in Singapore, I also saw some similar design styles. I can find their roots is Gaudi, is Spain. In 2010, I went to Barcelona. You can see from this picture, my face is fuzzy, and where is the focus? It is on the building behind me. This building is Gaudi's favorite work during his lifetime, called Casa Mila. Some local people will give it other names, such as La Pedrera. Because of its shape, it looks like a whole block of rock. Then, after being hit by seawater, many caves appeared. This building is not like other artificial works, but like a naturally formed cave. This work is consistent with Gaudi's design proposition. Gaudi was born in Barcelona, the second largest city in Spain. Barcelona has also been brilliant in the history of art in the 20th century. For example, 20th century art masters like Picasso and Dali were born in Barcelona. Cervantes also said, "Barcelona is the pride of Spain and one of the most beautiful cities in the world." Today, Barcelona is more famous for its architecture. When it comes to architecture, you have to mention Gaudi. He wrote his design gene for Barcelona. Spain is one of the countries with the most World Heritage sites after China and Italy, and Barcelona is almost the city with the most World Heritage in Spain. There are 7 works by Gaudi in the World Heritage list of Barcelona, so we should learn about how Gaudi changed Barcelona's skyline. In 1852, Gaudi was born in a small town called near Barcelona. At the time of his birth, it was also a period of massive renovation of the entire Spanish architecture. The King of Spain issued a special order to completely rebuild Barcelona. At that time, many wealthy businessmen also invested heavily in the renovation of their houses and some public places. So many children who grew up in that era, their first thought was, "I want to be an architect." So did Gaudi. But he is different from other children. He doesn't want to devote himself to inventing something new or to making a new transformation. Instead, he thought from the beginning whether he could imitate nature and build like nature. Just like we saw the La Pedrera before, more of his inspiration came from nature. Gaudi was almost born for architecture, because he has almost no hobbies except work. He gave us a feeling that the nerves were not particularly normal. He had a big beard all year round and seemed to have no friends. Except for his sponsor Güell, almost no one could communicate with him normally. He only spoke the Catalan dialect, so communication with his workers sometimes required an interpreter to carry out. He only took 2 students with him, so he thought it was enough to communicate with these 2 students. Gaudi's material requirements were very low. He often ate something casually and sometimes even forgot to eat. His students sometimes gave him a few slices of bread for lunch. So he was such a person who could not communicate with others and lived in his own world. He could ignore all the people and things outside. It reminds us of a previous legend, that is, he was as unkempt as Einstein, and even more so. He often wore the same clothes for 3 to 5 years and looked very poor. In Spain, in Barcelona, as a master architect, they all have a high reputation. But when he walked on the street, there were often passers-by who treated him like a beggar and gave him some coins. Of course, this also led to his tragic fate. In 1926, Gaudi was 74 years old. One day he was concentrating on how to build his greatest work, the Sagrada Familia. He walked unsteadily down the street and was knocked down by a tram car that had just appeared in Barcelona. Because he was ragged like a beggar, people sent him to a Holy Cross hospital in the shelter. 2 days later, he died in the hospital. An old lady recognized his body in the hospital and said it was Gaudi. Then all of Barcelona performed a funeral for him. Everyone came to his funeral and mourned him. Although he died, his construction continues. His body was placed in the basement of the Sagrada Familia, and this church is still being built to this day. The foundation of the Sagrada Familia began in 1883. In 1884, Gaudi, who was only 31 years old, took over the task. As a result, he did not expect that he would spend the rest of his 43 years completing the construction of this church, which remained unfinished until his death. 80 years later, we can see that this building is still under construction. This photo was taken in 2010 at the foot of the Sagrada Familia. We can see that there is much scaffolding and workers are busy on it. Perhaps it will be many years before the blueprint in Gaudi's mind can be completed. But it does not prevent the building from becoming a very important classic in the history of architecture. Let's take a look at this Sagrada Familia. You can see that it consists of many towers and has a Gothic style. According to Gaudi's plan, the church should have 18 towers. The tallest tower is 170 meters high and represents Jesus Christ. There are also 4 130-meter towers surrounding it that symbolize the 4 gospel riders. There is a 140-meter tower on the north representing the Virgin Mary. In addition to these 6 tall towers, there are 12 towers between 100 meters high and 110 meters high, representing the 12 disciples of Jesus. These towers add up to 18. But today we will find that all the towers are still under construction. None of them is completed. On each spire there are various colorful mosaic decorations covering the spiral staircase. In addition, there are many vivid statues on the Sagrada Familia church that seem to grow from the wall. The whole building is remarkably light and seems to be a castle built on the beach. In the last 12 years before Gaudi's death, he hardly did any other projects. Although Gaudi once contributed many great buildings to Barcelona, his last and most important work focused on this great building. Therefore, we say that the Sagrada Familia is the most important crystallization of his efforts and the symbol of his honor. Today, if we go to Barcelona, we can still see the Sagrada Familia from a distance. Maybe we can't see the completion of this project in our lifetime, but it is of great value in the history of architecture and is worth remembering forever.